So, Aaron, there's some people I'm sure that are listening that would love to know more about the Parallaxis Data Maturity Framework. Would you happen to just give us a few thoughts on that?
Yep, absolutely. So the data maturity framework that we've developed here at Parallaxis is essentially a methodology for establishing a baseline of your organization's data operations. And the point of it is to both determine risk and opportunity for innovation when thinking about implementing AI or machine learning in your organization.
And why is it useful?
Well, I think in this sort of gold rush to implement AI and machine learning, folks are oftentimes starting to implement in their organization without really understanding whether or not they're positioned well to see that the outcomes that they want to see when doing that. I think Gartner it was said that something like 85% of all AI models and projects sort of fail, due to poor data quality or little to no relevant data, and that's a pretty damning statistic. And so I think that reflects sort of the state of things right now, where everybody wants to kind of see AI come in and give them all the benefits that it has the potential to give you, but aren't don't really know that they're not ready and positioned well to see the ROI around the effort to implement it within their organization. And ultimately, our data maturity framework provides that insight, and sort of you should know once this evaluation's been done, sort of where you are and what you need to do to get to a point where you're ready to start implementing these advanced tools.
Well, cool, Aaron. So, if you don't mind me asking, so what are the components of the framework?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Parallaxis Data Maturity Framework essentially assesses your data operations across three categories. And this is really our opinion on what a proper data organization should have in order to be able to implement AI and ML successfully. We sort of broken it down into these three areas. It's a data governance, data management, organizational management. And those three things are related, they're interdependent, but without those, we feel like an organization is really at risk for sort of falling down out of the gate if they try and implement AI and machine learning.
Okay. Would you mind maybe a couple more sentences on how those three pieces are related, just kind of maybe a high level?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, like I said, these three areas are interrelated and interdependent, and they sort of flow with each other throughout the organization. And so your data governance focus within your organization is really about setting the rules around your data, setting your policies, looking at compliance, and making sure that there's consensus around all of those areas. And so they really set the rules about how you are dealing with your data. And then data management is all about essentially implementing those rules. So that's really sort of the operational side of things. So they make sure that things are being automated, they're auditable, that your data lifecycle management is in place and properly implemented. And then orchestrating all of that is your organizational management. Organizational management ensures that you have the proper people and culture in place to do the data governance and the data management properly, but also it ensures that everything is aligned to ultimately the business outcomes for all of these initiatives. If you're not doing that and you're not tracking it, you're sort of, it's the wild, wild west, and you don't know if you're really going to see any value from all of these investments. And so if you look and assess across all three of these areas, then you really have a more holistic view around sort of your gaps and where you probably need to maybe do some work to shore things up in order to make sure that you're seeing the return on your investments.
So, last question for me is, if somebody who was listening to this thought that this sounded pretty slick and they wanted to get their hands on it, how would someone go about using it?
You can right now go and essentially do a mini evaluation on our website. At the end of this video, there will be a QR code there that you can follow to take it yourself. And that's a sort of 15-point assessment. It sort of asks 5 questions across each of those three areas, and gives you a sort of general high level score, A, B, C, D, E, F. And that will give you sort of directionally an idea about where you sit. If you want the full comprehensive evaluation, which is much more robust and much more comprehensive, just reach out to us, and we can discuss. Every organization is a little different, and so we take a sort of consultative approach as we go into this framework evaluation process. But yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
Cool. Well, thanks, Aaron, for joining us. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Like Aaron said, any questions, feel free to reach out. And with that, have a good one.